Chapter 1, Lesson 3 on primary and secondary data. Okay, what is primary data and what is secondary data? Please get these definitions written down on those all-important flashcards, okay? So primary data is data that you have collected yourself, okay? Or someone's collected, but for your purpose. So data you have collected yourself but it is really important that if I asked someone to go and collect some data for me, that would also be primary data. It's being collected for the course of what you need it for, okay? So, or someone has collected on your behalf. On a flashcard, please. And then secondary data is data that has already been collected. So, for example, if you wanted to find the previous weather patterns for the last 30 years on a particular day in March, you would look that data up on the internet, unless you happen to know someone who has been collecting that data for you for the past 30 years, okay? So, but data that's already been collected, data that you're looking in books or finding on the internet. Okay, so primary and secondary data examples. So Banji decides to investigate the amount of rainfall in his garden. He uses a measuring cylinder to collect the rainfall each day. Is it primary or secondary? It's going to be primary because he's collected it himself. A research student decides to investigate the sales of books. He collects data from several websites. Going out to find that data makes it secondary. A student decides to do a project on the milk yield of dairy cows. He gets his data from the local farm records. Once again, information that he's looked for in a book or records, it's going to be secondary. A council member decides to investigate the use of a waste disposal site. He goes to the site and collects data by questioning the people using the site. That's direct collection of the data. That would be primary data collection. Okay, so this is the type of question that you may see. Charlie wishes to see which classes in year 10 and 11 is best at arriving on time in the mornings. Describe 2 ways he could get suitable data, one using primary data and one using secondary. I'm going to give you a second to think about that, please. So a primary data collection method, I mean, all schools are different. But in my mind, at the school I particularly work out, Charlie may stand on the gate, stand at the entrance. Charlie could stand at the entrance to the school. And collect data on the arrival time of year 10 and year 11 students. Okay, so that's one way primary data. You can literally go out there, collect the data yourself. Secondary data. Now, registers often reveal if students are late. So if it's about seeing who's arriving on time in the morning, then we're talking about on time or late. Secondary data is Charlie could use the registers to see the time of arrival. And we're not talking exact time of arrival, obviously, but whether they're late or on time. Okay, so that would be a secondary source. Okay, another thing you have to know, this is the final thing for this lesson, is the advantages and disadvantages of primary and secondary data. And as with a lot of things in stats, you're kind of having to use your common knowledge to apply it to certain questions. For example, if a question states that Mary wants to collect data on the flying times of different pilots in the UK, so how long they're flying for. Now, unless you know loads of different pilots, that's going to be tricky to get on a primary level, isn't it? So you're kind of using common sense, general knowledge in some times as well to kind of figure out what the best course of action would be. Okay, so let's look at this then. Primary data, advantages. Now, be careful here. I'm going to write collection method known. Some people say that the collection method is more reliable, is more accurate. That's not necessarily true. If I asked my 5-year-old to go and collect some data for me, it would still be primary data, but I don't think it would be necessarily more accurate or more reliable. The whole point is, though, is that the collection method is known, which then you can, use to your own, decide if it's reliable or not. So collection method is known. And sometimes when you're looking at secondary data, you don't know how that data has been collected. Okay, so collection method known is definitely an advantage. And you can also find answers to specific questions. If you wanted to know something very specific, you can design that question yourself. However, if you're trying to find the information online, you're kind of relying on what other people have found out previously. Okay, so collection method known, and you can find answers to specific questions. Now, the secondary disadvantages kind of falls into those two categories as well. So collection method unknown in some situations. Okay, so it may be unknown. May be difficult to find information to specific questions as well. Okay. Right, but then when it comes to some other disadvantages for secondary, is the data may be out of date. And also the data may contain mistakes, right? Data may contain mistakes. You're relying on other people here, aren't you? Data may contain mistakes. Right. Now, disadvantages of primary: if you have to go out there and collect all that data on your own or get someone else to do it for you, it can be time consuming. And more time costs more money, okay? So more expensive. Secondary advantage though is cheaper and quicker and easier. Okay, so they're the advantages there. Now, data from some organisations can also be more reliable than data you've collected yourself. You need to be careful with this one. If there is a source, for example, the Office for National Statistics is a well-known government statistical website that you can trust, so its data can be more reliable. In some instances, it depends on the source. Okay, right. That's all there is then for primary and secondary data. Don't forget to record any information on flashcards so you've got a quick and easy way to review that information. See you in the next one.